Did you know that the legendary news anchorman Walter Cronkite had his own UFO encounter? Yeah, it's actually true. I'll tell you about it right now. It was shared. I found this article written by Bill Nell, who was the person who had the conversation with Walter, where Walter actually told him about a UFO experience he had had. So I want to share it with you, and I'll also provide the link to the article within the description of the video here that I'm doing. So during a lunch, Walter told Bill that during the 50s, Cronkite and a bunch of other reporters were invited out to a South Pacific island, a small one, to watch a test of a new Air Force missile. They all went out to the missile and they inspected it. You know, he said that it was mounted to a mount and it was on a cement block and it was pointed out into the ocean, and it basically was a rocket. So then they were led away from the rocket launch site, and they were told by the Air Force under no circumstances were they to take any photos, record any audio, or transmit audio. This is a for your eyes only event and to be described later to the best of their ability via notes. As this rocket begins to fire up, he describes a flying disc type UFO appearing. It was about 50 to 60 feet in diameter and a dull gray color with no visible means of propulsion. He also describes the deafening sound of the rocket firing up and drowning out any chance of hearing whether that disc was making any other sounds itself. Walter said at that moment, Air Force guards run out to the UFO with their guard dogs. The disc, hovering 30 feet off the ground, suddenly sends out beams of light, one striking the missile that's in the midair, and the other to the guard, and the other to the dog. He says that all three of them at the same time were frozen and suspended. He said the guard was mid-step frozen, the dog, which actually jumped, was suspended in the sky, and the actual missile that was 70 feet up in the air into its ascent was frozen as well. And he said all of this happened within a 5-minute time period. He said all of a sudden the missile explodes, the disc vanishes, and the guard and the dog, who are just basically, they're taken away by medical personnel that were present during these kinds of tests. While all of this is happening, all the news reporters are being ushered into a concrete observation bunker, and they're left in there to cook and hotbox for 30 minutes before an Air Force colonel comes to address them. The colonel says this was all a part of a test, and Walter says that this is like seemingly like he's making it up as if he was going along, you know, making up a story here. He said that they were all staged to test the media's reaction to UFOs, and that they themselves were all not to report any of this to the media at any time, and that if they did that, that they themselves would be awarded exclusive stories on new Air Force projects, and that promise was never kept. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know Walter Cronkite's UFO story, you now know it, and that's the way it is.